Right, hello everyone, and welcome to my oil painting class. And today we're going to look at some gorgeous landscape from the Peak District. And I'm interested to explore some spontaneous mark making, perhaps with a sponge if you're brave, or some of the larger brushes. Um, just trying to encourage ourselves to be more spontaneous, more free, to relax a bit more from quite tentative work on details and think of big shapes today. I also want to see how some of the warm colors of the autumn hills could be contrasted with some lovely blue skies and those fluffy clouds. Right, so on my palette, I have a range of warm colors and a range of cool colors. Also got some white and the Payne's gray. So from warm colors, I have some cadmium yellow, ochre, excuse me, magenta, violet. And from the cool ones, I have cerulean, or you could have had cobalt blue, ultramarine, olive green, and emerald green. I'm using a violet, medium to darkness violet background because I'd like to have a nice darkness in preparation for painting our ground, and also in preparation to building up some of the blues and some of the whites. The darker background of violet and ochre gives us a depth instantly. So that's one of the reasons for the violets used today. Now I also have my turbs in one pot, and I've got my 3 oils in another one. So if I don't want them to be too smelly, I close them and open them up as they go. Because the screen is quite close here, the oil is quite close to me as well. So that's a good practice. Also, getting some fresh air is good after the session. So I'm going to start sketching with a brush. So I picked up my narrow synthetic brush, and I'm going to use some turbs. So when we're applying some lines earlier on, they will stay a little bit, they will get absorbed in the board a little bit. I'll start using my 3 oils. It will be quite oily and things, you might lose your lines very quickly. So those are my turbs then. Right, so turbs first, if you've got some. And I'm going to go for a little bit of violet. I'm going to dilute it just for sketching, a little bit more violet and tiny bit of Payne's gray. Don't want it to be solid black looking. So far it does look quite solid black, but there is more violet there than the Payne's gray. And you can just check it against your board as long as you can see it. If you have a lighter version of that violet and black, is fine as well. Right, so I'm going to start looking at how much of the ground of the peaks I can see. I was standing quite higher up, so we've got reasonably flat horizon. We've got much more sky than the land. So if that was halfway through point for my picture, so I've got probably, oh, I think that's almost a third. Yeah, so if I were to divide my picture into 3 equal parts, okay, that's probably a third where my ground is going to be. Okay. Okay, so we're sketching, we're planning, but we're looking at some very basic shapes. Now, next, I will have a look at the clouds in the moment after we've done the land. I'd love to spot some big shapes. There are loads of little nuances of shadows from the clouds, farmers' walls, little crevasses, and well, not quite crevasses, but valleys and indentations in the landscape. But let's have a look for a big shape of darkness we have here on the foreground. Okay, so somewhere quite a large shape here. It gives us a lovely diagonal straight away. Don't worry if it's not gonna come out perfect. Rub things out with maybe a kitchen towel or cloth. Okay, and this is our planning. This is us observing shapes. Don't forget we can amend things when we start applying colors. Okay, so try to work free. Try to just look for shapes rather than adjust anything too specific. Right, so these shapes quite big. I could have even painted them over, but while I'm using tubes, maybe I'll just, the big shape might just leave it out. But smaller shapes above perhaps will be easier for me, and not to sketch with a line, but to sketch perhaps with that little diluted color of violet and gray, Payne's gray. Okay, so maybe somewhere here, it looks like some sort of V shapes of darknesses. Okay, something coming here. Okay, perhaps tiny bit more. Okay, it gives us an opportunity to observe what we'll be painting. It gives us an opportunity to practice those shapes. We might like them straight away, we might not, but at least while we're sketching with a brush, I'm starting to do changing the horizon a little bit as I'm getting closer to those darknesses in the distance, just something approximately. But at least we are starting to be aware of the shapes. Okay, at the back, that's quite nice. And you can increase your peaks a little bit more if you wanted to. Maybe exaggerate some of them even more than I've done. Okay. Okay, maybe something like that. This is quite diluted with Sturb's color. It probably will disappear and dry, but it start losing its focus as a shape and as the borders, but it's quite nice and soft. Okay. So this shape is going to be all dark for me as well, but I haven't colored it in. This is going to be the one, but I'm just going to leave it out for the moment. Now, if I wanted to sketch my clouds, I'm going to change the color. If I were to sketch the clouds with a similar darkness, a similar color choice, they might pick up too much darkness in the clouds. So I'm going to go and try to find maybe the similar gray, blue, violet and ochre gray, which we can detect from the shadows of the clouds. So if I were to pick up some ochre and some violet, okay, so I'm getting more or less similar color as my background is, and then have some white. Okay, so if I've got quite a bit of ochre, I need a little bit more violet, and I'll use some ultramarine. That will make my color a little bit more grayish, a little bit more white so we can see it against the brown board. I'm just going to test it, how it looks. Okay, maybe a tiny bit more blue and tiny bit more white. This is going to be the color I'll be mixing for my shadows. So ochre, violet, and some ultramarine. And in some cases, we'll have a little bit more violet. In some cases, a little bit more ochre, a little bit more ultramarine. So that color will be slowly changing from mini version of that gray going towards more yellowish color. Just doing a little sample here while you're mixing yours, maybe more into the violet. Yeah, variation. So only small changes. Okay, maybe some more into the blue side. I just add a tiny bit more ultramarine just to see how it will be. And at the same time, I'm practicing, I'm exploring the possible colors for my darker side of my shadows, of my clouds, sorry. The shadow part of my clouds. Right, and let's see if we can start sketching them. Now, I'd like you to think of the clouds as big shapes rather than lovely fluffy shapes of a lovely fluffy specific silhouettes. I want you to think of, okay, the first shape is going to be somewhere there. I don't know, is it going to be too big? Is it going to be too small? But I have to put it on the board on my surface, yeah? I think it might be a little bit too big. So I want you to be really brutal and quite quick with your planning. Okay. I just used my Terps even to wash it off. My kitchen towel doesn't wash it off properly, but I'll take that reflective surface. As it will evaporate, we'll see less of it. Okay. Let's see, maybe this medium-sized cloud. It's leaving quite a lot of sky at the top. But if I think of it as something wider in the middle and narrower on the sides, first, I want us to decide its position. I want you to think of its connection to other clouds. Okay, maybe this one needs to be a little bit bigger now. So I'm thinking of sizes, proportions, approximately first, before we start doing any details. Right. I'll add a tiny bit more white to my paint as it's starting to dry a little darker. I want to make sure we see it. Okay. Right, and then the distant clouds. So we've got a larger shape, medium shape, and a group of clouds. I'm going to take them as one group together. So that's going to be all of them is going to be somewhere there, perhaps slightly wider on the right-hand side, slightly narrower on the left-hand side. Okay. The reason I don't want to do anything else with the clouds is because I want to paint them with my sponge, and I want to get the blue sky in place and then work really free with my strokes. I'm interested in the bigger size, medium size, smaller sub-size for the big group of clouds. Okay. So my drawing will be finished on this, and we can slowly start getting our colors out. Right, I'm gonna go for a reasonably large brush. It's filbert brush, so it's a flat brush with a round end, or any other flat brush will be good. I'd like to start painting our blues. I'm going to mix some of the colors first, and then we'll block the sky in. I'm moving into using my 3 oils. So now that's the turbs are staying aside now. Now I'm going to just use the turbs if I need to clean my brush. So I've just loaded my brush with some oil. Just making sure it's the bristles are nice and moist with the oil. And let's start with, I think I'm going to start with my paler cerulean. If you'll be using cobalt blue, you'll just need a little extra white within your cobalt blue. So my cobalt blue, sorry, my cerulean. Just gonna test it here. Nice and pale. So that probably will be some lovely colors I can put close to the horizon and slowly merge it with my clouds or gaps in between. So that's probably going to be the color going. I should have done it the other way around, but could have done it going up because that's how it's going to be in our picture, but it doesn't matter. So that's going to be our darkness going up. Could have had an in-between color if we wanted to mix the colors together. Yeah, something in between. And as I'm going further up towards the top of the painting, so far I'm just adding a stronger pigment from my cerulean, and then slowly I'll be adding tiny bit more ultramarine. I haven't washed my brush, I haven't cleaned it. If you have too much paint on the brush, you can always wipe it, but you don't need to clean it in any other way. We're moving from one color to another, just using tiny bit of ultramarine, and then slowly getting a bit more stronger darkness, and the pigment coming through stronger there as well. I might even go darker. That's when I can mix slightly more cerulean and quite a lot of ultramarine. My white is running out on the brush, which gives me a lovely darkness of the sky. Okay. So gentle change of colors and gentle change of tone as well. So while I've got my darker blue on the brush, I'm going to actually load a little bit more. I'm going to start with the top of my sky. I'm going to start painting a little bit more oil, so my paint doesn't look too dry. So a little bit more. I'm using both colors, both cerulean and ultramarine. And the white is still somewhere within my paint mixture, but it's not the dominant ingredient anymore. Just move it across a little. And let me put my paint down, that's it. The brush will take quite a lot of paint, so that's why it takes us a bit longer to mix the color and get that consistency. And then most importantly, just put a stroke somewhere on your top of the painting just to see, does it look dark enough? Is the color transparent? We need to have it a little bit more solid. Transparent, it's when we use quite a lot of oil when we were sketching those transparent layers we had. Okay, and what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to place a few big strokes, approximately thinking where my cloud is going to be. If I'm running out of color, or partially just will be changing the color, so I'll be just topping it up, tiny bit topping up with my oils if it becomes quite dry. Okay, so my strokes, not painting the fence, I'm doing a little bit more of the strokes this way, a little bit more of the strokes that way. So there will be a little extra light showing through that direction of our strokes. I just do a little bit more again. Have another box under my board. Okay. Right, and that's a bit patchy, but I can move that one anyway in a moment. Right, I'm going to start adding more cerulean now, maybe a tiny dab of white. So now I'm going to repeat the same process the other way around. Because we have quite a lot of darker color on our brush, that color will be harder to make it lighter. So after a little while, we'll clean our brush. So far, just trying to blend my colors. Yeah, okay, that's might be a little bit too light too early. So bring my cerulean back. So that's okay, painting it over. If I paint over the area of my cloud, there's nothing wrong with it. We'll work with our sponge later. So I'm just dabbing, I'm just almost creating mosaic-like strokes, painting just a flat sky. I think less attractive, showing a little more strokes and in imperfection of the surface will give us that. Is it the movement of the wind? Is there something else there, that natural feel for it? The strokes don't have to be all small, they could be slightly larger as well. Right, as I'm going lower, I'm going to add a little more white and cerulean. And again, just putting the first stroke and just seeing how it appears before going further. Okay, just checking. There will be quite a lot of gaps in this corner of the sky for the clouds. So we'll see little gaps of sky somewhere here. So I'm just going to paint a little bit over it. Okay, let's see what's going to happen here. If you're smudging, if you had quite a lot of paint from the colors you sketch your clouds with, and you start having more of a murky browny blue, just see if you can get a bit more thicker paint and overpaint it so it's not too strong. Okay, that's quite nice. Actually, not too sure if I want so many small strokes in the top. I'm going to finish my lighter colors and maybe come back with a couple of darker strokes. Okay. And I'm going further and further into the lighter color. My brush is running out of blue, so it doesn't feel like I need to clean it. But if you're trying to move further down and the color doesn't get lighter, just use a tissue and just wipe the large volume of paint off. You don't need to clean it in any other way, just wiping it off is enough. And then start perhaps with a fresher white, and then just going for a small amount of cerulean. Going to test it maybe close to horizon, see if any of that. Now I'm gonna have some of the white clouds, so I can't go too light with my sky. So maybe something a little bit darker version. So perhaps there will be a gap. Again, I'm painting more than I need, so then I can play with my clouds after. Just trying to spot some of the gaps between the clouds, and might give me time to think of the rhythm You know, that's a larger shape, that's a medium shape, that's a small one. We don't want those shapes to be all the same. Maybe there will be something small. Right, and then I'm gonna go above my clouds as well. Possibly a similar color I've just used, but I can blend it with existing color. And using a large brush allows us to blend the colors easily and also not overdwell on what we're painting. Okay. Okay, I'm just looking for some softness. Yes, there is lovely softness here, but I will need a tiny bit more darkness to improve my top of my painting. Your darkness might be totally fine, so you might not need to do that. Just carry on doing what you're doing. Yeah, it's those strokes I want to unite, and perhaps larger strokes, larger marks. Okay. Double checking any of the darker blue needs to be anywhere else. Maybe just a little stronger blue somewhere here. For me. Okay, that's it. Half of the painting is done. I'll wipe my brush. I'm not going to clean it. I'm just going to wipe it. I probably will need it again when I start painting my clouds. And I can leave my brush aside. Now we're ready to start painting our clouds. Perhaps just watch me doing one shape and then give it a go. So I've got my sponge. I'm going to pick up some of my 3 oils. That's going to be quite, that's why I'm using quite a wide pot. So I can put my whole sponge in there, or part of my sponge in. So I've soaked it in. So I'm going to lift some of the color with the sponge straight away and mix it with a sponge. So I'm going to start with some white. Our cloud is going to have a little bit of warmth on its light side and a bit of extra coolness on the shadow side. But I'm going to start with the cooler colors first, and then perhaps add my warmth with a brush later on. So I'm going to ignore the warmth first. So a bit of white and a small amount of how we're mixing our colors here. A little bit of violet, a little bit of ultramarine, a tiny bit. If you're not too sure, maybe just help yourself with this with a brush to bring it across. So this is just enough white color, just a little bit of that ultramarine, tiny bit of violet. I want to have more grayish looking darkness. So it's not too violet, it's not too blue, something in between. Now we also have tiny bit of ochre. Again, if you're going to use it, just use maybe the side of the paint. So that's quite a yellowish color quickly. So I might need to balance it back by bringing slightly more violet and slightly more ultramarine. Okay. So I'm getting that exciting color. And what I'm going to do next, I'm going to block my big cloud here. Thinking of the light tone for it first. So using the first strokes, my paint is partially transparent, so I can see partially some of that violet background. But this is my first layer and a good opportunity to start deciding on the shape of the cloud. So I can go over some of my blue, And look how softly it could be smudged and interacted with our blue. Okay. I'm trying not to overwork it. I can smudge it in the middle, but when I'm working with the side of the cloud bordering the sky, maybe just do a stroke and just leave it, just see how it's going to happen, what's going to happen. Okay, probably will be running out of color. That color is not going to be quite clean anymore. It doesn't matter. I'm just looking for the better shape for my cloud altogether. If it will be flat, if it's not going to be of a particular correct shape yet, we can work with that. Okay, so that's some sort of darkness, medium, some sort of darkness in there. But I want it to be a little bit more darker, so I can come back to my ultramarine violet, bit of ochre, a little bit more brave with the volume of paint and its darkness. It feels like the color is too brown. It means you haven't got enough blue. Okay, I'd prefer you to go more into the blue than the ochre or violet. You can give yourself a little sample on the side as well. Right, and let's put some of that darkness. Okay, maybe a little bit more blue rather than violet, otherwise I think it looks like my background. Okay, maybe I'm actually lifting a little more paint from the background. No, it's okay. Okay, so I'm thinking of big strokes, nice big chunks. Okay. Well, I've got that color. Maybe I should put it on my smaller cloud as well. Again, just somewhere approximately. If you would have painted the whole shape of it, wouldn't be wrong either. We're just losing it a little, but we're gonna bring it back. Okay. And now I'm going to start moving to the lighter tones a bit more with my sponge. If your sponge got a lot of oil, you can just wipe it on a tissue, just a little, so that's not overwhelming darker color. If it feels okay, if you squash it and nothing comes out, you're absolutely fine. We'll just need to have much more white on the sponge. Oops, sorry. My construction of anti-reflection has collapsed. Oops, let's put it back. Right, so some more white, squeezing my existing paint from the sponge. See what's gonna happen color-wise. And I'm going to place some lighter strokes. And I will give you some beautiful mark making. Just try to enjoy your strokes rather than think, oh, is that a pretty cloud or not? Try to get some soft marks and sharp marks. So placing a dab, yeah, might give you a darker version of it. It might give you a bit more of a lighter version. That's quite nice. Maybe there's a little subtone somewhere in the bottom. You want to try to use a finger and feel how it's smudging. Okay, quite like some of that contrast. It's not quite as it is on my photograph, but it's working. So I'm going to keep it as it is. So now you're working, you've got a reference point from a photograph, but you're actually working with what you have on your picture. If you enjoy a specific area, you keep it. Don't try to repaint it and overpaint it. Okay, maybe a little bit more bolder light somewhere here. Okay. Anything else for me for the top? Perhaps. If you don't like a stroke you made, maybe use the back of the sponge to lift it or partially lift it. And we can always come back with our larger brush. I think I might have just brought too much white here. I want a little bit more stronger blue. Okay, so I'm going to bring my blue back and perhaps try another stroke over. Okay, just wanted a little hint of a smudge. Okay, a little bit more fresh white. This is where your painting will start to be yours. Quite hard to directly copy now the strokes. So just try to stay spontaneous. Lovely. The less is more. Also, don't be scared. You've done the area, you worked on your cloud, maybe you overdone it. Stop, make a decision, wipe it off. Get that basic shape again. Yeah, probably by the time you wipe it off, you will have that basic shape. You will also lift the volume of the oils, and that will be easier for you to repaint it. If not sure, just leave it as it is. Don't worry. Try another shape. You can always wipe it off. Oils will stay white for a while, wet for a while, so you can work into that one continuously within the next couple of days. Right, so I've got another big fluffy light. Okay, maybe a little dab here. I'm observing my cloud, seeing what's happened to it. There's some more fluffy grays, but they're all kind of spread out. Are they lights? Are they grays? Are they? I think it's more of less solid cloud. So let's just work with some smaller marks and some smudges. Okay. If my marks are becoming too similar in size, I've got 1, 2, kind of 3, 4 similar. So I'm starting to pay attention to it. Perhaps I need to squeeze my sponge to a point. Maybe if it's too much with working with a sponge, maybe I'll pick up a brush. I'll just do a little bit more. Maybe I'll combine some of those strokes. Okay. That's quite nice. I think some of these these shapes need to be darker, so I'm going to come back to my violet, ultramarine, and ochre. I'm actually running out of ultramarine. So I want a little more ultramarine. Dab of ochre and violet. Okay, let's see how that. I think I need a tiny bit more. Okay. That's better color. Maybe some of those shadows will now start interacting with my paler strokes. Gonna look for some partially horizontal, partially diagonal directions. Okay, maybe a little bit of softer of this white, although I do like that boldness of light, maybe a little bit more wider here. And individual strokes, bold strokes, will give you the form. So what I've done here, I've done one direction, another direction, another direction, and it's almost shapes that volume. Okay. What I can't do with a sponge, I can do with a brush. Any similar size strokes we can touch up with a brush later on as well. Just put a bit more brighter white for comparison, also just to see if that volume of light is going to work later on. I think it will. It's when I add a little bit of warmth to it. Okay. Now the clouds below probably will be done better with a brush. However, I'm gonna just use that current color on my palette and put perhaps a couple of larger strokes. They're more or less horizontal shapes. Okay, similar-ish widths, almost like a little train of them. Okay. And again, back to some light. Escaping. I think it's my vigorous sponge use today. Okay, so perhaps a little larger shapes. The sponge allows me to, it mixes the colors within it. So the colors belong to the that group of colors we mix in quite quickly. So maybe they're not bold and light yet, but at least it more or less does the job for me, the sponge. The white is here and there. I only want to make an impression of it. So we lost and found some clouds. We lost some of our blue sky. We found some extra shapes. We'll exaggerate them a bit more with a brush. Right, I'm happy with that for now, so I can leave my sponge aside, just in case if I'll need it. Well, for sky, perhaps enough. We'll need it a little bit more for land later. And I'm just going to squeeze the sponge into kind of with my tissue just to take most of the paint away, but it doesn't have to be clean. Okay, so that will be fine for later. Right, now let's leave our clouds be for the moment. We'll come back to touch more definition and light for the bottom row, and also a bit of extra warmth and the highlights. Let's have a look at some of the light and medium darknesses for the ground. I'm going to start now again using my sponge, which is partially cleaned. If you want to use the brush, that's fine as well, because we have less of a scale. I'm going to load it with some, it's already got moisture from previous colors, so I'm not adding any more oil unless if you really want to. If I'll start adding paint and the paint is reasonably thick, then you can just dip it into your 3 oils mixture. Right, so a bit of white. I'm going to use some cadmium yellow. Okay, that's a bold color. Now I've got some other colors in my sponge so it doesn't look fresh cadmium yellow. And a little bit of my emerald green. Emerald green is very strong pigment, so you only need a small amount of it. And I'm coming back to my cadmium yellow, so that's a little bit more yellowish pigment now. Okay, and I also want some of my magenta. Okay, I'm running out of paint. I think it's all going into my sponge, and maybe a tiny bit more oil. That's better. So I went for yellow, emerald green, and some magenta. And we're going to test, so I'm just going to leave one here. We're going to now move from this color to a bit more yellowish color to a little bit more reddish color, magenta-ish color, yeah, as we apply it on our work. I can see some lovely greens close to my big shadow, so I'm just going to place a few big strokes. Okay. When I'm painting with a sponge, another good thing about it, the strokes are reasonably flat. They don't have too much thickness earlier on. So it allows me to put more paint easily over it as I'm working. Okay, so maybe some of my, I don't know if it's too light green, but let's leave it for now. Let's get more magenta. Okay, I'm just going to use the tip of my sponge to mix it with my green. So that's my other version. So I'll just increase the volume of magenta. And that's what I was saying. Don't worry too much about our earlier sketch because we're partially going to lose it. And we're going to find it again. And my strokes, following kind of the shapes of the hills. Yeah, maybe pressing a little bit more, maybe using the width of the sponge. It's a little bit of nice extra color here. And the colors mixing well together because they are from the same. We just mix them all together. That green already had some of that magenta. That magenta is not a foreign color. I'm gonna pick up a little bit more stronger one just to vary it, yeah, just to make a little extra exaggeration perhaps in that. I want to see a little bit of it, maybe somewhere here. And my background color, that violet, is working already well with the colors we applied. So if I were to add, if I want to make shadows, if I were to add some violet to my color here, okay, maybe that will be something we want for our shadows, or at least partially. So it's a little bit of a fresh looking violet. Okay, less is more. It's easier to overpaint, so maybe just gently work into it. So it looks everything very soft. We can sharpen a few things in a bit. So maybe I'll increase my violet. If I want to make the violet darker, my greens and magentas and ochres, what I was mixing together, wouldn't allow me to make my violet darker. Instead of using Payne's Gray with that, if I add a dab of emerald green, that will give you a very dark pigment. Okay, I still want to stay more with violet than with green because I want to use it for my distant peaks, but there will be a hint of green in them in some of them. So any of those varieties will be fantastic. Okay, so let's, again, try not to be overly accurate. Just place a little bit. We can come back with our brush. I just want to place a little bit just to see if I need to smudge it anywhere or place it a bit more stronger. Yeah, so that's my first reaction to why I'm still using my sponge. Maybe a little bit more of that color will come in. Okay. And I'm going to have a little bit more green on my sponge. Let's have a look at some of those darker shadows. Let's see how they will start. If I use the edge, you know, when I cut my sponge, kind of a squarish shape, the reason for it, the edge will give me some wonderful drags of straightish lines. So my sponge got more of the paint on its corner. It doesn't look like there's a solid paint, but obviously it will stay there. So I might draw something with that. And that's again gives me some lovely shapes and lines. Okay, maybe just a little bit. Maybe I don't want to overwork it. And then let's see where some of the darker greens might be within my shadow. Okay, that looks a bit too light. Maybe I need more violet and green. I haven't cleaned my sponge. I just keep on topping it up. Okay, maybe partially could have some green-like shadow. Well, I think this shadow will be looking even better with some violet. So I'm gonna work with some violet, mix some more violet there. And let's increase its darkness. Let's look for that shape. If I overwork my shape, I think I just a little bit lost its initial silhouette. Maybe I'll come back with my lighter color afterwards and tweak it. For now, I'll keep it as it is. And let's put some more darkness somewhere here. Okay, so I've got that lovely softness for the hills, lovely softness for the shadows. That's the part we wanted from our sponge. Okay, maybe my other shadow is going to be a little sharper. Okay, for now. And let's see how the colors are settling. I quite like this darker stroke, but the shape of it may be better. Okay. So I can see tiny more sharpness at the back for some contrast. I've got some stronger contrast maybe somewhere here. So I want to have more contrast on my landscape, but I wouldn't be able to do it now with a sponge. So my sponge could stay aside. And we can pick up our brushes now. Right, now I'm going to move to using some smaller brushes, medium to small size brushes. And let's work back into our land, into our peaks. So let's have a little bit of oil on my brush. Let's start with some white. I'm going to load whatever left of my yellow. Ochre is fine as well. Okay, just want to have a stronger pigment from it because I know the green and magenta will be quite powerful. Okay, just lifting off some more pigment. So green, magenta, so I'm back to those colors I've just been mixing. I want to pick up some lighter tones from it, so I'm just mixing the color first, and then I'll add more white and perhaps more yellow in the first instance, and maybe work into more magenta afterwards. So here's my similar color I used, maybe perhaps a little bit lighter or more, even lighter. I'm kind of trying to be careful not to go too light, otherwise we start contrasting with our clouds. Right, and let's have a look where we can add some of the fresher strokes, perhaps somewhere here in the bottom of the valley. Okay, maybe it will be, because the brush has more precise marks, we will have that sharpness. We don't have to have that sharpness everywhere, so I can smudge some of its borders or bring the color with another brush or with your finger or with a cloth or whichever you might want to use. So I've gained a little bit of sharpness here. Okay, maybe another little area. Okay, I think I need a tiny bit more white. Okay, so it has a little more neutral look. Okay, that's too white, too light. Okay, I'll just smudge it in. A little too white. Okay, that's a bit better. And I just want to have a little integration into my shadow, so that softness is partially there, but it's also partially disappearing. And just explore your brush strokes, how they will look against a very soft environment. Place a stroke, step away and have a look. Place another one, place it in a different setting. Okay. Maybe a little more warmth from my magenta and ochre. I haven't washed my brush. I'm just adding more and rolling my brush, kind of wiping it off. All that greenish color is getting mixed with my new extra magenta and ochre. Right, I want something a little bit more lighter here. Okay, it's quite yellowish. Let's have more magenta there. Okay, let's test it. Maybe still a little bit more. Okay, maybe a dab of white. I don't want it to be so red. Want a little bit more pink look. Maybe a dab of violet, if that pinkness, that violet purple tint doesn't come through. Maybe I had too much ochre. Okay, all right, something maybe somewhere here. Anything else on the sides? Try not to paint. Right, I've got the peak here, right? So let's put this paint all in one place. Let's continue it with something else. It might be a stroke. It might be a little area, and then you change in the color. Quite like this corner of these valleys coming in together. So maybe if I just gently introduce a few highlights, just suggesting some of the lights. I will sharpen some of the shadows as well, just starting with sharpening the lights. Still don't know if I like that overly burnt orange. Okay, that's a bit better. So I'm just adding that tiny bit of whitish, a bit more pastel tone, especially close to the horizon. It'd be quite nice to have a little more pastel color. Okay, that's going to be too bold. Okay, that's nice. Okay, if I'm adding a line, maybe it will be a little support for it elsewhere. Maybe it will be partially smudged. Almost that lost and found shape. Okay, that's better. Right, anything else here? Okay, that paler green, I think, could have a little more light as well. Okay, maybe just a little link how this color is getting in height-wise. Okay, I'm just trying not to overdo it. Okay, good. And anything this side, maybe my darker violet. I'm still painting some lights, but maybe just a slightly darker tone in comparison to its shadow color. That will be quite light. Sometimes using a little extra light within the shadow, because we've got the wet color, it mixes together and absorbs that light. So that might be a good idea to use something a little darker. Okay, again, a bit of lost and found shapes. Maybe I'll put a little bit more paler trees here. Maybe just coming through in this area. If you wanted to do that, you need to be careful not to. There's a white cottage, there's another one, there is a barn, something else. So try not to see too much. Right, I'm happy with that. I think I need to do a little more details with my shadows. Okay, I've done one stroke. Okay. Right, so shadows on the ground. So let's come back to our violet. Maybe a little bit more runnier paint if you were using quite solid, hardly any oil paint like I did. So now I'm going to go for more violet and some oil. Can have a dab of green, but not too much. So it's not just a fresh violet. Right, anything else I need to bring across? Oh, right, let's look at my shadows. That shape could be softened with my finger. Perhaps I'll add some smaller dabs of trees, starting to have little silhouettes. I can do a dab and a smudge and another dab, but I'm gonna try not to make polka dots type of strokes, so they're all starting to be the same or within the same area, kind of dabbed through, but might be just a little bit. Okay, let's see how that goes. Sometimes picking up a different brush or a wooden wedge or the back of the brush just to make those marks different is good. Okay, just want that variety. They are a little bit almost similar gaps in between them for me. See if that will vary. Okay, maybe by smudging partially there. Okay. Now I've put a little more details close to us, but don't want to overload volume of trees or smaller details in the back. That's why I'm starting at the front to know not to go further too strongly. Right, that's where I overdone my lights, so I'm just going to bring some more dabs. If we'll see them, we'll see them. If they'll disappear under my shadow, that's fine as well. There might be some of those farmers' walls. We see a little bit of lines work, little drags. Again, they could appear and disappear. You don't have to continue them and find their route. Okay, just double checking what's actually happening now. Okay, it's fine. And a little bit more further. Okay, so let's see if some of those shadows might link to something else here. A tiny more details. The dark paint, as you apply it, will start getting lighter and lighter because of the lighter colors on the background. So just keep topping it up. Okay. Yeah, that's exciting. Something not quite told, but it's there. Right, and let's sharpen a little bit some of these areas. Now I'm gonna go not too bold. If I'm starting bold, I know my brush will get mucky and that darkness is no longer be so strong. So then I'll just encourage my bristles to pick up the background color. Right, I'm going to pick up some of the tones here. I might turn them to more distinctive shapes. Maybe use the sky color to tidy things up as well. Okay, that's quite good. Anything too sharp, maybe soften. We are painting the distant spaces, so they don't have to have a perfect outline or that finest shape. Sometimes we see much more darker, stronger silhouettes on a photograph, but we know it's with our perspective, what we see in the distance shouldn't be overly dark. Okay, that's quite good as well. And even this darker smudge is quite exciting. Okay, anything for these shapes? Might just encourage another V shape valley. Just slightly. Okay. I think if I were to put extra lines, I might just put a couple. They might be too aggressive. Let's just put a couple and just see how that looks. Yeah, they're looking a little bit dark. So I think I will just leave them suggested, and that might be enough. Might not put anything on my extra light area here. Okay, that's fine. That's good. I'll just drag this one a little further. But here, I think I've got a similar width shape, so perhaps just slightly subdividing. So it's plain nuances. You might have done something quite quickly and it's worked for you. You might be working on something what I've done quickly for a bit longer. So don't get too frustrated. Okay, these are my trees. Yeah, the smaller the strokes you can make, the variety of the tones you can make, the more groupings you can make, the better, rather than too many individual shapes. Okay. The further we go, the smaller those shapes, so the lighter, less precise they're going to be. Right, I might soften a couple of these dark lines just by going over them with my finger, so they're there, but they're not so strong. That's better. It does look like a nice valley now. Okay. Right, I might stop at my peaks. See how they dry. Maybe look at them from a distance. And then we can focus on our clouds. I just looked at my picture from a different angle, and I think I can do with my foreground to be tiny bit more darker. So I'm using olive green and a small amount of Payne's gray just to have a slightly darker corner. So if you were to mix that color and just spot is anywhere in your painting, it could gently come in. Olive green, my olive green, I've got quite yellowish tone to that. So it does bring a little extra light for the greens. Right, maybe oops, run green. Then a bit more of it. I think I'm gonna put it maybe somewhere a little more here, so my shadows got some of the green across. Okay, so I'm looking, I think I can see my colors settling and reflecting less. It does give me a few hints of where that color might follow through. So just taking it through the middle of the valley here, through the shadow, so that becomes even more three-dimensional. Just a smaller stroke and a larger stroke. Maybe this darker green shadow will have more of a smudge. Does look quite strong. So I'm doing a stroke and stepping away. I'm looking how it appears. I'm looking at the whole picture in once, rather than just that specific area, seeing how that influences the work. Does it feel that way through? Okay, maybe I will bring more ultramarine and Payne's grey a little bit back into my shadow here, just to flatten it in its base. Okay, it doesn't want a line, I want a shape. Okay, that's better. That's more of a shape. And that's more of a extra depth for the slope here as well. Okay, that's better as well. It's almost like a shadow within a shadow. I think this one could go a tiny bit lighter still. That's personal preference for specific areas, specific elements within my piece. Okay. Right, let's stop here for me. Otherwise, I will start overworking it. And let's focus on our clouds now. Right, so for the clouds, let's start this time from the smaller clouds and work with our smaller brush. Going to get some white and a small amount of cadmium yellow. So small we can just about see it. It's need to be more white than yellow. So just off yellow, really, off white. Sorry, not off yellow, off white. Just almost that you can't even see it. You can see just a little glow. So that's going to be our lighter stone. Now, because we already have some paint on our surfaces, this fresh white is not going to stay fresh white for long. So that's why I'm not mixing any in between tones, but I'm going to go straight away using it. So I'll need a chunk of paint, And let's start maybe with one of the larger clouds at the distance. This one on the right hand side, probably a good example. So let's give it a big smudge. Yeah. And maybe it's have a neighboring little smudge. Okay, maybe a little bit of light for it. My white is no longer fresh white, so that's quite a nice subtone for it. Okay, good. Top up the fresh paint. Anything below it. Okay, where we've got some larger light. Okay, so somewhere there. Okay, a little dab. If some of the lines will come out too strong. So for example, in the photograph, I'm bordering with my clouds are bordering with the peaks. If I don't really want to do that, if I want them to be more or less disappearing into the grayish background, that's fine as well. If you've got quite a lot of space, you can even put another layer of some sort of clouds in there and just put in slight variation of that light and dark. It will give you that impression. Okay, so that's more of an imitation and particular copy. The first cloud was what we were looking at, but then we're improvising a similar effect. Right, so next cloud, something's gonna come here, maybe a larger stroke, maybe just smudge it into what we already have. Okay. Keep topping up fresh white. Might just go for that higher level of clouds first. These ones don't have as much light. Maybe something in the middle of them. Maybe they're not as significant. But also feel free to just experiment to put a little extra stroke here and there. Yeah, as long as we have that variety. Yeah, we don't have to have that perfect focus on what that cloud row is. Again, I'm just using my finger just to smudge some of the bottoms so I don't have too sharp borders. Right, and my sub-small layer, again, I'm just going to, with some extra little marks, little stretches, little dabs, dots, nothing. So I'm just making it a little busy. Okay. Try to vary them. So if there is a cluster of clouds and then there is calmness, yeah, try not to make the same type of size strokes. These are perhaps a little bit too light, quite like the ones on the left and the ones on the right. Maybe these are too light. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna wipe my brush off. Okay, and almost lift it, and at the same time, I will have the previous colors still at the back. Okay, and I'm just gonna smudge that in, so I'm creating a flatter shape back, and that's less boring. That's a bit more distant. Yeah, that's less, it's more of a variety. That's fine. That's better. If I want to have a fresh blue introduced here, just to make the colors a little bit more fresher. So here is my white and cerulean. And if I paint a fresh blue sky there, it will immediately give me that space. Yeah. So anywhere you want to recreate that sky, just touch it up with some stronger fresh blue. Okay, that's fine. Right, let's come back to my higher clouds. And I will need I'm going to start with a smaller one. So I've got small ones, tiny ones, going back to maybe medium-sized strokes while I'm in this area. And they're not going to be so fresh white, but we know it's going to smudge. So if I were to start with a lighter tone, so there is a little dab of light somewhere here. So I'm looking for shapes. Okay, maybe it's tail coming out somewhere here at the bottom. Okay, I'm sort of picking up more fresh white. I need some paint, but maybe less fresh. Right, what's going to happen here? So the top of the shadowy areas will have some light. Okay, 2 dabs of a similar size. Let's increase another size so it's varied. Okay, anything else? Okay, another darker shadow. Gonna put a little medium light to it. Okay, I've got this less successful smudge, but can I turn it to more of a cloud? Yeah, that's happening. Okay, this corner, little sharper mark of light. Okay, anything else underneath? Okay, maybe a bit too much. Just take some of it off. Okay. Any other subtones in this medium size cloud? There's a lovely little baby light. So to have it standing out, if I were to have a sharper top and a softer lower area, and then I'll follow through. I'm actually enjoying my brush, so I might just continue using it for now. Okay, and now for the larger strokes, that over dabbing of the smaller scale strokes might be harder. Okay, that's better. That volume. Okay, let's bring some of this highlight. Now I can use a little extra yellowish color in comparison to what I had before. Just had a bit of fresh white. Okay, little subtone of light, but not overly bold. So I'm just breaking it down into smaller shapes. There's a little tail of this cloud. Right, any more stronger cadmium yellow and white, some fresh, really fresh color, and the chunk. So I'm using a thick paint, and I've got a big chunk of it on my brush now here, on the tip of the brush. So I'm going to look for that white somewhere here on the tip of the cloud, and perhaps partially smudge it, make it. I think that's where I need my larger brush, really. Okay, that's better. A little white in the corner. And some more. Okay. And I want a little partial smudge here on the top as well. Okay, that's nice. Right, and that's giving me an opportunity to see some bolder light. Maybe somewhere here. Again, just keep looking at your picture. I think I'm going a little bit away from my photo, but some excitement's happening there. Okay, and let's have a couple of more strokes for the larger cloud. Just adding a tiny dab of cadmium yellow to my white. Probably can't even see it, but it makes it extra strong. So let's see where that light is going to be. Here, and the paint is quite soft, so adding the thick paint over is lovely. Okay, maybe a little bit on the top here, but I need to smudge it. Just want to bring some chunks of paint first, and then I'll smudge it in a couple of areas at the same time. So bringing that thickness first. Okay, perhaps even wiping my brush now and just integrating these strokes. Yeah, the colors surrounding those strokes absorb the white. Okay, where my brush doesn't do it, my fingers will. Again, I'm just looking for the larger strokes, smaller strokes, disappearing strokes, a bit more shapes we can see. Okay. Quite like this depth, which this cloud doesn't have as much, but if I'll bring a little bit of light over, might just come partially. Yes, it does. Just partially calms it down. Right, the shape as well there. Okay. Anything else? Anything else? Just looking at this shape. That's better as well now. Right, and I think I'm ready to stop. Again, I'll probably will move my painting to look at it from a different angle to see how it's maybe reflecting less in a different setting. So maybe I will need to touch something, but I think overall I'm there. And the same I'll advise to you, if you were to stop for the night, maybe look at the piece from a distance, maybe look at it in a daylight. Perhaps you might want to touch something, perhaps you might want to smudge something. Give it a go, stay brave. I prefer you to repaint something, but stay brave and do it rather than be too tentative and not to. Take a photograph if you're worried, then at least you see what and have a recap on how it was. and then give it a go. So thank you very, very much for today. I hope you had fun, and I look forward to seeing your painting.